Welcome to Mystery. I'm Vincent Price. Tonight, Sherlock Holmes risks his life in what he calls his strangest case, the dangerous adventure of the Devil's Foot. Overwork and unhealthy habits have taken their toll on the great detective, and his doctors have recommended a restful vacation to prevent a complete breakdown. So, Holmes and Watson set out for the wild coast of Cornwall to read and to observe the ancient archaeological ruins. But as Holmes has often pointed out, when his mind is not occupied with the solving of a case, he has to relieve his boredom with something else, usually a 7.5% solution of cocaine. Now, modern audiences should remember that Holmes's drug habit was not as shocking to Victorian readers as it may be today. Holmes shot up long before narcotics were considered particularly dangerous, long before drug abuse became the problem it is today. In fact, during Holmes's time, cocaine use was not even against the law. Still, Watson, a medical man after all, disapproves and wishes his friend could relieve his ennui by some other means, perhaps a vacation in Cornwall. Well, the Cornish coast has a long and twisted history of superstition and bizarre lore, which Conan Doyle knew very well. So it's no surprise that tonight's story, which begins as a rest cure for the great detective, quickly develops into what the press dubs the Cornish horror, and what Holmes calls the strangest case I ever handled, the adventure of the Devil's Foot.
Hello and welcome to the LBC Irregulars, a story-by-story review of the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes series produced by Granada Television between 1984 and 1994. I'm your host, Kathy Bright. Joining me on this adventure through Sherlock Holmes is the Sherlock Holmes to my Irene Adler, Jarrod the yard sale artist, Albrecht. Good evening, Jarrod. How are you tonight?
I am well. I have brought you 2 lamps, and each one has 2 things of powder. I'm doubling up the gifts tonight. I was just going to bring 1, but I decided to bring 2 for no reason.
You want to make me nap a little bit quicker than...
Maybe. Don't worry about the powder. Let's consider this an incense burner. But these lamps are my gift to you.
Well, he just likes the way they sound when they hit the ground after he throws them off the cliff.
I can chuck these at distance too, my friend.
I actually noted that in my notes about throwing the whole lamp. Well, I accept your gift, and I will offer you the gift I brought you, which is I knew it was going to be late. I knew you probably were going to be hungry. I brought you some curried mutton. I'm going to need you to eat every bite.
I love mutton. I love curried mutton. I haven't had curried mutton since 1892. Isn't that funny?
Curried Mutton was the name of my band in high school.
How dare you do it? Whose voice was that?
Well, I guess it's time we should probably introduce our guest. This episode, we have reached out to the LONGBOX Crusaders on our All the Access Patreon page, and you will never believe who agreed to be on this episode. None other than Dave Moriarty Collins. Hello, Dave. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I guess that's better than Battle Wagon, Collins, so I'll take Moriarty all day long.
Yeah, we'll call it a battle wagon anyway. Curried Mutton.
Again, Curried Mutton was my high school band. We were very popular with the stable lads. Very popular with the stable lads. We could pack a stable for a show like you could not believe. And the little maid housekeeper ladies, they just stood transfixed. It was quite the shenanigans, I'm telling you. I can go back and relive those days. I can work something out.
Well, we are happy to have you back on the show here, Battle Wagon. And now it is time for Kathy to give us a recap of our first story. If you're not familiar with The Devil's Foot, you might get your ending spoiled. Over to you, Kathy. Did a great job on it last time, so I expect perfection on the one read through this time.
Holmes has been ordered by his physician to lay aside all of his cases and surrender himself to complete rest in order to avoid an absolute breakdown and the possibility of being permanently disqualified from work. Holmes and Watson traveled to the Cornish Peninsula to stay in a small cottage near Podhu Bay. Not long after they have settled in for their holiday, they are visited by a neighbor, the local vicar, Mr. Roundhay, and his lodger, Mr. Tregennis. These two men come to seek the help of Mr. Holmes with an extraordinary and tragic affair that occurred during the night. After an evening of playing cards with his two brothers and sister, Mr. Tregennis left them still sitting around the dining table in excellent health and spirits. When he returned the next morning, they were all still seated around the table exactly as he had left them, except his sister was laid back dead in her chair, while his two brothers sat on each side of her, laughing, shouting, and singing as if they had both lost their senses. All three were stricken with looks of horror on their faces. There was no sign of anyone else being present in the home other than the housekeeper, who claimed she slept through the night and heard no sounds at all. Will Holmes take this case against his doctor's orders? What could have happened to the siblings of Mr. Tregennis after he left? Did he have anything to do with what happened to his siblings? Keep listening to see if we come up with the answers.
All right, now it's time for some highs, lows, what those, where we each take a look at the good, the bad, or the meh of the episode. We start with Dave Collins, lead singer of Curried Mutton, also keyboardist.
The keyboard, the one like the
guitar.
The guitar, that's it. Yeah, the guitar. The guitar, that's the one I really like the best. All right, it's prepared to be amazed, okay? Because I have got something for you guys. Speaking of the guitar, my what the is the part after, for whatever reason, Holmes figures out what he's supposedly is causing all this. And rather than break out the chemistry set, heck no, we are going to burn this ourselves and we're going to see what happens, by Georgie. And what happens is we are regaled with what can only be described as a fever dream of the greatest 80s rock video you've ever seen in your life. And it is just absolutely nuts. It was just fascinating. All I can say is it was absolutely fascinating. It just was crazy. It was nuts. But it made a good point in the thing and showed how powerful this drug was. But I do have to say, I didn't look it up, but I think there was a moment in that thing where there was like he was falling down a waterfall. And I believe that was a little homage to The Final Problem, in which Holmes falls down the waterfall and supposedly dies. Did y'all get that too?
No, I don't think that's a thing. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's actually...
My feelings were almost hurt for a second there.
No, that is absolutely. They use the footage from The Final Problem, the old Reichenbach Falls footage. Yeah, I noticed they laced that in there too. Very clever. So your eyes did not deceive you, sir.
My eyes did not deceive me. Awesome, because I thought it was pretty clever. But it was a smidge over the top. You know, I was talking about this earlier with some other friends, not you guys. And I had said that it looked like David Bowie had directed that little spot because it was very 80-ish rock video-ish. And they agreed. They were like, yeah, that's a really good correlation, Dave. And I was like, thanks, guys. Friends who shall not be named. But I really, really thought it was good. It was a wacky scene, but it really drove home how powerful the drug was.
Absolutely. Those sound like really good friends.
We talk about things all the time. We're really close.
All right, let's see what Kathy's got to say about this episode. She usually does her first round as a Watson watch. What did you pick up with Watson on this one, Kathy, if you're doing a Watson watch?
I always like to do a little bit of a Watson watch. As usual, I love the Watson-Holmes relationship in this episode. I love caretaker Watson. I like the interaction at the beginning with Holmes and Watson when Watson's grinning in the carriage ride that this is my dude, this is my guy. He's kind of enjoying taking a holiday with his best friend, even though his best friend is having to do this to avoid having a mental breakdown. He still looks like he's happy to be hanging out and being able to take care of his best friend. And then we go to the concern you can see on his face when he realizes that Holmes is about to partake in the very bad habit he has, but yet he still gives his friend the space to do what he needs to do to manage himself. and his situation.
You're right, Kathy. I think Watson's an absolute gem in this episode. He's clearly he has this giddiness about him because I think he takes Holmes's health more seriously than Holmes does. And so I think he's very happy to get him away for a while. I think he very wisely decides not to give Holmes a lecture or anything on the drug use. I think he's got enough forethought that he's like, if this goes well and, this whole break we're doing, this holiday we're taking, that solution just might solve itself. And he was proved right, ultimately, on that.
I was just thinking, it's almost like the mystery of these stories is the MacGuffin to get you to the Holmes-Watson relationship.
That's
like
brilliant.
That really doesn't matter because all the heart of the stories is all about their relationship.
You have wonderful insights.
That is pretty intelligent.
A smart guy.
Well, I'm going to hit my first round as a Watson moment, kind of. I'm going to go back to what Dave talked about with the whole trippin' 80s music video of Holmes making questionable decisions on just going on. This is a substance I've never seen before. Let's snort it. I don't know about that, but it's sort of one part Holmes, one part Watson. I really liked when he was like, okay, open that door. We're going to light this up. We're going to see what happens. And then he was like, yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, Watson, you can take a powder if you want. You can get the heck out of here. And I loved Watson, just always like stalwart Watson. I'm not going anywhere. When was the last time I ever left you? I'm not leaving you today. That was good stuff. And then Holmes goes through his tripping phase. Watson's there to pull him out of it. And I just really love the character moment of Holmes's realization that he could have, and very nearly did, get Watson killed. Like, he had his terror moment and then it got ramped up. He got more terrified when he realized that he could have hurt Watson. And he doesn't show that kind of emotion a lot. So that was just really neat and it really was touching. And I liked it a lot.
Very cool, sir. Very cool.
Speaking of cool, back to you, Battle Wagon. Coolest guy I know.
Oh, here we go. So, man, we're just Watsoning it up. We should call this the Watson Show. The Watson Watch. We should just call it the Watson Watch, the whole thing.
The whole thing.
So, Watson said what I was thinking while I was sitting there at the very end. And then when they finally got down to the second guy who could have been the killer out of the two people that could have been, and they figured out what's going on. And, and he just kind of lets him walk. And he's like, I understand why you did this. You didn't kill the other people. It was a revenge. And like the double quadruple homicide was pretty interesting because it was like, what is this, a serial killer going on? Or is this whatever's going on? I think most people probably would have assumed that it's a serial killer just knocking folks off, or knocking that whole family off. But then we find out what's really going on. But, we've seen this before, and Holmes has been right there with him, and we've seen this before. One of my favorite examples is the blind guy in the 52 series. I can't remember the name of that episode, but that's one of my favorite ones where he's out and he's just waylaying folks. And then, but Holmes lets him go in the end because he knew that he was doing it. It was, his cause was righteous, I guess you could say. But I like that moment a lot. And then I really liked it when, Watson's like, you know what, bro, you just gonna let this guy go, man? What's up? We're part of Law and Order. We, 5-0. And he goes, I'm on vacation, man. I'm on vacation. So I really enjoyed that part. I thought it was cool.
Absolutely. There's, as you said several times, where Holmes values justice over the law. And yeah, he knew that guy who had killed Tregenus in a revenge killing was a danger to nobody else. He knew he was just going to go off to Africa and get lost there. And yeah, it's always interesting when he's all like, yeah, I'm not the police. And then as you put it, yeah, I'm on holiday, man.
I mean, call the cops if you want to. It'll take them 6 days to get here, but it's got to be in Africa by the time the cops get here.
Yeah, I got a little bit of a kick out of the fact that guy, who I'm certain was played by a bear, I'm not sure who the actor's name was, but I think it was a
huge.
I got a kick out of the fact that he came back to kill the dude that had killed his love. Tregenus could have got away with it. What his Achilles heel was, the mail system there in England was just a little too fast.
It was very speedy.
If that mail hadn't got to the bear dude like a day later, he would have been gone. He would have been gone to Africa. But no, man.
Well, we learned when Alan Porter was on the episode that how many deliveries a day did they
10.
have?
I think he said back then they had 10.
I think he did say 10. I think he said 10, and they even had helpers. They would have so much mail.
That's right.
Fell victim to those overly speedy
The real thing is, I mean, this is a grown man he's fighting, and he literally holds him with one hand. The guy's standing up. He's not tied to a chair. He's standing up, and he holds him and goes, "You're going to breathe this while I hold this handkerchief over my mouth with my other hand." And that's how he kills him. Like, he literally holds him in place. I like to think that if he'd have just picked his feet up and fell to the floor, that guy wouldn't have been able to hold him up. But again, like Jarrod said, he's a bear, so he could have held him up.
He did. He killed Treganis like one-armed. He did it.
He could have just snapped that cat's neck. Like, he literally could have just snapped it like a twig, but nope. He said, "You're going to smoke this, and you're going to like it."
Yeah, you're going to get what you did to your own sister, you turd. I think he called him a turd. Maybe not. Kathleen, second round.
I think the only other thing I want to add is, again, I sound like a broken record, back to the relationship with Holmes and Watson. I loved the scene at the beginning where, as Holmes does, he shows off a little on showing the vicar that he knew who he was and kind of how he came to the conclusion of who he was. But then at the end, he's like, "But I really read it in this little trade magazine." But I love when he's inviting Watson in now. When he asks Watson to come and say, deduce. And then he praises him for the good job he does now. Something he never did in the first few episodes that I watched. And I think that makes it easier for Watson to appreciate that he's doing the right thing by being friends with Holmes. Like, he's not wasting his time by being a companion to Holmes. Each episode, we see Holmes grow very unintentionally because, he's not trying to get better and grow personally. So I just like seeing that growth with that character.
I hope you can remember to put a pin in that, because I would like to bring that up again in the next episode. But yes, that was a cool scene when he was like, deduce. And then he had that cool hand motion with the trowel. And he was like, "Oh," in the magazine, you could tell, like, Brett did an interesting job of, you could tell that just before that he had done some drugs. So his emotions were a little erratic and he was a little more over the top than usual.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
I would hope not, Kathleen. but yeah, it's played very well. And you're right. He's including Watson now where he wouldn't do that necessarily in the past, and even saying nice things about him. So apparently when he's high, he's a really cool dude to Watson.
You talk about his hand gestures. That's taken me a while to get used to. I didn't know anything about this show when I first started listening to this podcast and started being on this podcast. And I wasn't a big fan of Jeremy Brett and his flamboyant moves. It was just a little too much for me. Too show choir. I don't know. What other way to describe
Jazz
it?
hands.
Yes.
Jazz hands.
But I've definitely grown to appreciate it and understand where he's coming from and why he's chosen to portray the character that way. So,
well, spoiler alert. If we're talking flamboyant, let's wait till we get into this next episode and he's out there cruising across the moors and he is flopping that coat he's got on like he's an angel about to take flight. So more to come.
He's like a boss out there, man.
Strutting. He was kind of like an imperial commander. You know how they wore the capes in Star Wars and stuff? He's a little like that.
Dun, 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 dun.
Well, I will bring it in with a cool Holmes moment as we wrap up this episode. Just a micro moment, really, but I just really liked it. And it's when he confronts the dude who was played by a bear. And he's like, "Yeah, man, I followed you. So that's why I know all this stuff about you." And the bear dude was like, "I looked and I saw no one." And Holmes was like, "That's what you would expect to see when I follow you."
Yeah, boss level.
Boss, like a boss. He was smooth. Boy, he was smooth. That's what you should expect to see when Sherlock Holmes is watching you.
And there's also an even smaller moment of the grin on Watson's face when Holmes says that.
Oh, I need to rewatch that. He's like, "Yes, my boy."
Exactly.
That's my bro.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Anything else? Anybody got any burning highs or lows before we move on?
So overall, what did we think of this episode? We just happen to have a system in place that helps us rate each episode. On a scale of 1 to 5 pipes, 5, you loved it, it solved your mystery.
Aha.
4, it was very good. 3, it was all right. 2, you did not like it. And 1, you hated it. It threw you off of Reichenbach Falls. How would you rate this story? Dave, we'll let you go first.
All right. So if I was Joe November, musical genius Joe November, I would probably go 4.5. But I'm not musical genius Joe November, so I'm going to have to stick it at a 4. But a little caveat to that, I will say that when I first started watching these, I think period pieces that we watch today, like the newest Little Women and Pride and Prejudice and these kind of things, period pieces that take the period very seriously, the production value is so great. It really sucks you in. I mean, they just do such a fantastic job. And this is 80s at its finest. And it's British 80s at its finest. There are some times and moments it just doesn't feel like you're really in that moment. But I kind of grew to love it. I really did. I kind of grew to love it. I like the style. I enjoyed it. I'm going to rock this 4 pretty dang gum hard.
I like it. And I want to point out, too, that the production company on this does a real neat job of using particular camera angles and things like that to crop out the modern 80s-ness that has crept into some of the scenery and stuff. They do a really good job of that, especially when you watch. Kathy, we did the movie like feature, didn't we? Sign of the 4. And
Correct.
man, they did. Remember when they were like going? They literally went down the Thames, and they had to shoot from specific angles so that they could. In the shot wasn't anything that had been added. No air conditioners, all that kind of stuff. Like, it was pretty cool.
But you know what? Now that you just said that, I realized that I don't remember what episode in particular it was, but I've made mention before of how sometimes I feel like they crop too much.
Yes.
Like they zoom in too much on Holmes. And so you can't see his hand gestures. Like it's, you can see parts of it, but you can't really see the full effect. But I don't feel like they've done that a lot recently. It is more kind of epic. And we'll talk about actually that a little bit more in the next episode. But as far as my rating, I think I'm going to join Dave at a 4. I like
over
that this
to the 4 side.
Oh, that's good. It's a little bit different story with the whole, you think they're scared to death. How on earth could all 3 of them had suffered these consequences? Nobody in the house. So I like the story, but as usual, it always goes back to Watson and Holmes, their relationship. And so I'm going to give it a 4.
I like it. I learned recently on something else I was watching, and it made me immediately think, because you've mentioned on the show more than once about the blocking, the shot blocking. Sometimes you feel like it's a little too zoomed in. I saw a thing the other day. They were talking about Die Hard 2. Don't worry, I'm going to make all this come together.
Yeah, I can see how Die Hard 2 and Sherlock Holmes lockstep.
The next natural step, right?
When I think Sherlock Holmes, I immediately think Die Hard 2. So yeah, I got you.
Yeah, the second Die Hard.
Yeah,
not the first, not the third.
Yippee-ki-yay, number 2. Yeah, I got you.
What I learned was they did that. Apparently, I have to go back and rewatch it. But I was watching this thing the other day. Apparently, they did a lot of that with Bruce Willis in Die Hard 2 because a big thing had happened between 1 and 2. His hair was already thinning in 1. It was getting even thinner in 2. So they would tighten so you didn't see his hairline. And that made me wonder. I was like, I wonder if other productions have done that. Like if the actor themselves is having like a bad hair day, but they don't want to like take the time to go back to trailer and all, like just shoot it. Like we'll just crop it. And that's why you won't see that. That made me think. I was like, I wonder if that's happened on Holmes because Kathy's mentioned it before.
I mean, I have never not cropped a picture I've put on social media, just saying.
Well, I don't know if y'all know this about me, but I'm huge into social media. Like I'm on there all the time. And yeah, I see a lot of crop photos and I crop a lot of mine too.
Mm-hmm. On your MySpace?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the AOL chat rooms.
AOL chat rooms, yeah.
He's strictly fans only.
Well, I mean, I can send you a link for a subscription if you want.
I'm going to move on. And my score for this one is going to be a 5. I will accept nothing less than a 5. Honestly, if I was Joe November, I'd be, thinner. But also, I would give it a 4.5, just like Dave said. I'm right in that territory, but I'm going to crank it up just a little bit because I really, really like the Watson Holmes thing. And I really like the fact that I've read the story many years ago. I've seen this episode a couple years ago, but I came into it and I couldn't exactly remember it, which is bonkers since there's really 3 suspects and one of them dies, as Dave pointed out earlier. So you get down to 2 suspects. But I couldn't remember how it worked, which means the storytelling was pretty layered for such a small cast of characters. Like, there's not a lot of characters, but the storytelling's really layered and it's revealed well. And anyway, I have to explain myself to you people. I'm giving this one a 5. I really, really, really liked it.
So that's 2 4s and a 5.
But wait, there's more. And here's Kathy to give us a recap of our second episode, Silver Blaze, which was the name of the band I fronted for in high school. Again, if you're not familiar with this story, you might get the ending spoiled.
But wait, before I read the synopsis, let's listen to Vincent Price introduce our next episode, Silver Blaze.
Good evening and welcome to Mystery. I'm Vincent Price. Tonight, Sherlock Holmes tracks down a kidnapped racehorse and discovers that his trail leads to murder in the adventure of Silver Blaze. Silver Blaze is generally considered by readers and critics alike to be among the best of Conan Doyle's tales of Sherlock Holmes. Ellery Queen claimed there was no finer sports detective yarn. It delivers Holmes at his incisive, dynamic best. Conan Doyle must have agreed, for we know that he bet his wife a shilling that she couldn't name the murderer. And she couldn't. Can you? The Adventure of Silver Blaze.
While Watson is enjoying his breakfast, Holmes comes in and declares he must go. Sherlock has been brooding over the curious disappearance of the favorite horse for the Wessex Cup, Silver Blaze, and the tragic murder of its trainer, John Straker. Holmes has decided to cooperate with Inspector Gregory and the horse's owner, Colonel Ross. After arriving by train to King's Pyland, they were shown around the training stables and given the details of the events to date from the colonel and the inspector. At the stables, they interview the maid and the stable boy who was on duty that evening. They both mention that the only unusual part of the evening was when they were both approached by an unknown gentleman looking for inside tips on the horse race. The following morning, Mrs. Straker called to the maid that her husband was not in his bed. They go to the stables to look for her husband and find the horse missing as well. They proceed to check the grounds, where they find Straker dead from blunt force trauma to his head. Who killed John Straker? Who has stolen the prized horse Silver Blaze? Will Sherlock solve the case? We know he will, but let's find out together how.
It is now time for highs, lows, what does. We're going to take a look at the good, the bad, and the meh of the episode. You know what? I was going to make some kind of joke, but we're not horsing around here. We'll start with Dave.
All right. So, first of all, I'm going to do a twofer here. Who knew that telegraph poles were 60 yards apart?
Sherlock Holmes.
I like a little knowledge in my stuff. I like a little knowledge. And so I'm going to be honest, when I watch these or the old ones or whatever we're doing, I always try to figure out the mystery before they tell me, because I like to think I'm as smart as he is or try to be as smart as he is. I could not make that happen this time. Like, I was at a loss. I was like, I'm missing something here. Like, I couldn't figure it out. I did think about the dog a little bit, but I think my favorite part of this one is the way he broke the dude at the other horse training thing. He just like comes in and carries him in, and he just starts going, "You're walking with a horse," and blah, 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 blah. And that guy just buckles like a belt. Like, I mean,
he did. He rolled over so fast.
I mean, he rolled over so fast. Do not have this guy on your crew if you're doing a job. If you do use him, cap him as soon as you're done, because this guy will buckle like a belt, squeals like a pig, whatever you want to use. But like, he didn't prove anything to this guy. He just is like, this is what happened. Is like, oh my God. So, I like that part, but I guess that speaks to the intensity that Holmes has when he's dealing with these criminal.
Dare I
underworld
say,
people.
Dave, dare I say that he came down on him?
He came down on him. Little flash Gordon there for you.
To work that in. I'm so happy now. Oh, goodness.
He's Sherlock Holmes, not. I can't. I'll have to figure something out. I'll come up with something.
Go
I'll work on
that line later.
I'll work on that.
Oh, yeah. This was definitely an interesting episode because I was like you, Dave. I was like, shoot, I've read this. I've seen it before. And just like last episode, I could not remember. I was like, who killed Straker?
And I've read all the Holmes stuff, but I couldn't remember this one. But that dog, I was like, somebody that was in the household.
Mm-hmm.
It was somebody in the household because the dog would have woke him up. So I knew that. But for the life of me, I was like, man, what the heck? So, yeah, I was having a hard time putting those pieces together. I'm glad Holmes come along with his conjugate glue and stuck me together there.
I really like the part where he's figuring it all out. And this was the part that started putting the light bulb back on in my brain, was when Holmes goes up to, I think it was the stable boys or something. He was like, hey, you got any sheep come up lame? And they're like, yeah, like 3 of them. And he was like, and that's when I was like, oh, okay. So, because what does that mean? That means someone was doing something to sheep, probably something kind of like in practice. Okay.
Yeah, testing the theory. Yeah, testing the theory. I didn't catch that at first. I had to watch it again. Like I usually watch these twice. So I was like, oh, that's what he's talking about. So yeah.
He was puzzling that piece together. Let me try that again. Piecing that puzzle together. All right, Kathy, I specifically for once, because you and I have a reverse order in the second round, and I always steal Watson Watch from you. I didn't do it this time, so let us in on what's going on with Watson.
Well, I will not linger, and I will go ahead and tell you.
Nice.
Shocking, it's about Holmes and Watson's relationship. My absolute favorite moment for Watson, and I could not for the life of me think of anything else but when he said, when you let the dog out. Whoo, whoo, whoo.
Yeah, I thought it too. Oh, damn you, Baja men.
If my agent ever books me for this podcast again, I'm going to tell him no. Like, it's just too much.
And then the immediate Holmes going, well done, Watson. That was the question I was going to ask next. I'm like, was it really? Like I said about the previous episode, the fact that Holmes has let Watson into his world enough that he is so proud when Watson does a good job with trying to figure out the clues and the mystery of what's going on.
Yeah, Watson is like with the notebook and he's asking smart follow-up questions and stuff. And yeah, Holmes is impressed. And I remember I told you we were discussing last episode to put a pin in that. This is where it's going to come back. I know it's not my turn, but it occurred to me. So he's got Watson sort of living in his world, and Watson is being a good influence on Holmes. Remember in the earlier episodes when Holmes was interrogating the housemaid lady in an episode, and Watson has to lean over and whisper in Holmes's ear, and Holmes is like, oh, yeah, maybe you'd like to sit down, because he doesn't care about people's comfort. He just wants to solve it. He just wants the information. And in this one, he went over to the lady who's, I think her husband was been found dead, and she doesn't want to talk about it. She's upset. He takes her by the hand and leads her to the table and sits her down with the most tenderness that he would not have had back in season 1.
He had his gloves on.
He did still have his gloves on.
I noticed. I was like, he still got his gloves on.
But I felt like I was like, that is the influence of John Watson.
And I think I've mentioned that in a few of the past episodes. It's like you can definitely see him showing more concern for others. It's not always about himself right now, or less about himself. He's not showing off as much as he did in the first season or 2.
Just has that drive. Like, yeah, those first seasons, the drive was to solve the case. I don't care about other people's comfort, blah, blah. We talked earlier in the last episode, that's his dope. That's his energy, is to solve stuff. And when he didn't have the ability to do that, going back to what Dave said, what was he doing? Counting telegraph poles and timing them to figure out how fast the train was going. Nobody needed that information. Nobody needed it. But he needed something to do.
So you can't help but wonder that if Holmes was in modern times, what he would do with Red Bull. Like if he was on some Red Bulls, like he would really solve some stuff.
He would have some wings, man. Anyway, while you've got the mic, Dave, it's your turn for round 2.
Oh, it is my turn. Oh, yay. So this is really nothing. Like, I mean, this is truly nothing, but it was important to me. The first episode was all them out in the country, and then a lot of this episode was, flamboyantly flinging their cape around the moors, and that
like
kind of
Blade the Vampire Hunter.
I know, flinging around the moors. But thankfully, the first little portion was in the rooms. I like it when they're in the rooms. I know that might sound weird.
No, I do.
But I like it when they're in the rooms. I like to look around the rooms and see what all's going on. Every incarnation has something a little different going on, but it's all basically the same. The chemistry set, the tea set, the pipe, the violin. But I don't know. I always like seeing that stuff in the room. I don't know. I was really glad, especially seeing how the rest of this was all outside or off location. I was glad that we got that. Again, probably the only person. I know there's a million listeners out there. So all listeners out there, when you're listening to this, you let me know what you think.
But have you searched online for wallpaper that looks like Sherlock Holmes wallpaper from the TV show Sherlock? I don't know.
I'm going to tell you right now, I have not. Let me go.
I know somebody who has.
Let me go a step further. I've never searched for any kind of wallpaper.
Oh my Lord!
I have a wife. That's her job.
No, I tell you what, though, Dave, I agree with you. I love 221B. I love it. I tell you what, I did go on the internet and search for is a 221B Lego set, which they do make, but it's knockoff Lego. It's not Lego. But luckily, we've lived long enough to where knockoff Lego is as good as Lego now. Remember how it used to just be laughably bad?
Is it Eggo?
I don't remember. Let go of the Eggo. I'm trying to remember the name of it in case someone actually wants to order one if they're still making them. Oh, Fantastics with a PH or something like that. Anyway, the quality was surprisingly good, and it's like this room that opens up, and it comes with Moriarty and Mrs. Hudson and Holmes and Watson. It's got everything you want in there, the little violin, little slipper, pipe, and all. Like, it's super cool. Anyway, that was my commercial for the 221B fake.
Did you mention Moriarty?
I did mention Moriarty, as some people pronounce it.
So as a sidebar, apropos of nothing, my daughter is studying abroad, and she is in England now. We're going over to visit. But I think I'm going to have to swing by like some 221B or something. So I'm going to have to go check it out.
Hey, coordinate with DJ Christados because he has an upcoming visit to London as well. Maybe you guys can
Really? I'll touch base with him.
Do that. One of my very favorite things about Silver Blaze is the way Holmes reveals what he knows. He has it all solved. But horse owner dude that reluctantly hired him to come out to the country was a and Holmes was like, I'm going to be a and make him sweat it all the way to the very last minute before I tell him what happened.
I did write down in my notes, I don't like amateurs.
Oh,
and the carriage ride over there.
Holmes' response was, ha! Oh, man, because like he called him an amateur, and then like Watson cut him a look, and Holmes just dropped.
Like, he's in trouble.
Yeah, this guy.
He's fixing to kill this guy.
He reined in all of his thunder for coming down on the guy at the other station.
Come down on him.
But yeah, that guy was like, I'm not impressed with this Holmes guy, but he's kind of just a turd the whole time. And so when Holmes puts it all together, he could have absolutely said, okay, here's what happened. Here's why the dude is dead. Here's who murdered the dude, which I thought was brilliant, by the way. That the murderer, we're all trying to figure out who murdered him, and it's in the freaking title. And then I guess I'm going to end it with a little bit of a low, not a big low though, but like, didn't it kind of end the same exact way that the Twisted Man ended? With the sponge to the face?
Yes, and you know that I was cringing as soon as I saw him slowly reach for that sponge. Oh.
I remember how much you didn't like that scene, but I was like, this is basically a twisted, or was it Man with the Twisted Lip? What? I can't remember the title of that one off the top.
Yeah,
Twisted Lip.
Was,
I think it's Twisted Lip.
Twisted Lip. Okay. Yeah. But anyways, I'm kind of covering the whole episode, and Kathy still needs to talk. So you get the last official round, Kathleen. What do you got on Silver Blaze?
I want to talk a little bit about how much I enjoyed. Well, first of all, the epic. I like when they're outdoors. They love a good moor in some Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And the shot of them in the middle of the moor, very small, this huge shot of them in the middle of the moor. It was beautiful. I thought it was pretty. Looked windy and cold. It just looked so inviting. But no, I want to talk about I know we have several different inspectors that he works with, but I loved Gregory. I wonder if Gregory is the inspiration for the TV show Elementary. The detective that he works with in that whole series was named Gregson.
I think Gregson actually shows up.
Is there a different
in
Inspector
some
Gregson?
Holmes
Oh,
work.
okay. Okay. Anyway.
I wouldn't bet my last dime on that, but thinking back, because again, I read these when I was 13, and that was it was a few years ago. But I feel like there's a Gregson in there somewhere.
Oh, okay. But I liked Inspector Gregory. And I think Sherlock Holmes liked him as well because, you know, when they first meet, he tells him that he's a keen student of his work and how he works. And when they went to the scene, he had the horseshoe. He had the different shoes to compare. Like, he was prepared. He really has studied Sherlock Holmes and his methods. And I think that's the way to get in with Sherlock. Get him to help you and teach you. And so I really liked that inspector, and I liked the camaraderie in this, and not the way him and Lestrade are kind of always at odds with each other.
Oh yeah, he straight up doesn't like Lestrade.
But in
Lestrade is so jealous as well. Like, he's a lot of jealousy.
Well, I
there.
think Jarrod said in another episode before, it's because they're trying to show each other up instead of working with each other. They're trying to, like, oh, I can figure this out before you do, kind of thing.
And it's a little one-sided.
Well, yeah.
You're right. I did forget how much that guy, I think he said he was a student of his work. He was very methodical with what was in the dude's pockets. The only thing that he didn't do well, and Sherlock gave him an earful about it, was the crime scene of the death. He was like, "1 billion people have trampled through here, blah, blah, blah." And then I love watching him investigate. He gets down on his belly and he's like looking, and he's pulling stuff out of the mud. Like, that was fun.
Yeah, and you kind of felt bad for the guy because you could tell he was so trying to impress Sherlock. You know, it's really rough when you're trying to impress people and, you know, you screw up.
But I think Sherlock ultimately liked the dude. And so I think, you know, just a little effort and people are going to like you just fine.
Well, you know, I've never screwed up in trying to impress people, so I don't know how that feels. So
maybe someday.
I hope that works out for y'all.
Well, that is it for our officials on that. I do want to say one more thing, and if anyone else can jump in too. This one reminded me of the last one because it was very much the horse is missing. He's not here. There's literally one other place it could possibly be.
They're
But
in
they
a
look
wagon.
there.
No,
But
they're
they
in a
look
wagon. They're in a wagon, and there's a house. Wait, that's our stables. And then they pan around. It's like 400 miles of empty countryside. Oh, what's that place over there? Oh, that's the other. That's my competitor. There's no way he'd be there.
There's no way he's got.
There's no way.
We checked the caves. We checked the gypsies. It's like, it's over there.
There's no way my competitor would ever steal my horse and try to win this race. That's absolutely impossible, you amateur.
But now they did say, the inspector said they did check those stables, so give them credit.
I guess they didn't find him.
Did they check him like a Holmes check, or was it more like a drunk guy on the street check? I mean, come on.
He already had his hair done, so, you know.
Okay, now you're going to get me to run my mouth again. Speaking of drunk guy on the street, this guy wasn't drunk, but the one dude who was like rolling up trying to get the racing tips, was he not awful at his job? Like,
terrible. Take this, put it in this. Here's a little dress money.
Give me some tips. Here's $1. Get away from you, weirdo.
Man, have you never been in a bar and tried to pick up a young lady? You got to be smooth, man.
I thought you said a barn. I'm like, you're going to a barn?
Either way. Because sometimes people are picked up in barns. There's probably people listening to this who picked up their wife or girlfriend in a barn. I'm sorry.
The lead singer and guitarist for Curried Mutton.
Yeah.
Or Silver Blaze.
Like, he just blows up on this lady, like, bam, like in the dark, in the middle of nowhere. There's no houses. It's not like I just came out of the grocery store. Oh, hey, how you doing? Like, you walked up on me.
Give me some racing tips. Here's $5. What?
Well, and I really do wish they would have zoomed in on what it was he had, because I'm like, is he trying to get her to kill the stable boy?
Yeah,
I was so confused.
Poison? Is it a? Yeah, apparently it just ended up being some money.
Yeah, I think so.
It was weird. That guy had no game at all.
No,
It was definitely his first day of trying to get racing tickets.
This is your first try, buddy. This is your first try.
And then he tried it again with the kid and said, "Hey, buddy,
hey, guy, let me hang on this window.
Let me peek my head in this window. Like, get the hell out of here, you weirdo."
Just do like normal people do and just watch and see if it poops before it races. That's supposedly
normal people do. I didn't know that.
I think that's what for dog racing.
Dog
racing. That's
out
what
at the tracks.
For dog racing, that's what they say. Like, watch for the dog who's either, I don't remember, but anyway. All right.
So the lesson here is, if you meet Kathleen at any of these events we go to, don't give her any money. So
here's the thing: challenge her to a race, but make sure she didn't go to the bathroom first. Then you got her. You got her. She's deceptively fast, by the way. Anyways, Kathy, you're very dangerous over short ground. I've seen you. She's like an alligator, close to the ground, so she can cover it real fast.
That's a dwarf.
I knew you'd like my Lord of the Rings reference.
Yes, thank you.
Kathy, take your show back and let's do some scoring.
So, what did we think of this episode? As a reminder, we have a system in place that helps us rate each episode. On a scale of 1 to 5 pipes, 5, you loved it, it solved your mystery.
Aha!
4, it was really good. 3, it was all right. 2, you did not like it. And 1, you hated it. It threw you off of Reichenbach Falls. So, Dave, how would you rate this episode?
Well, if I'd have watched it, I'd probably give it a 4. Seeing how I didn't watch it, I'm going to still give it a 4. I like this one too. Like, this one was good too. I enjoyed it. This one was, like I said, I mean, I couldn't really figure out where this one was going. I didn't really see the horse killing the guy like that part. I enjoyed the heck out of that. I was like, I really like that part. It's almost like when the hunter's out hunting the deer and the deer gorges the hunter. Like, I always like that. It's like, that's always fun. I like the way that he just kind of drugged the colonel along because he was kind of fed up with the colonel. So I really enjoyed it. I'm hoping to get back in London maybe for the next one. I'd like for us to get back out of the moors and stuff. I know Kathy likes being out there in the cold wind, rain with the capes fluttering in the wind. But maybe the next one we'll get back on. But it was good. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna go solid 4 on this one.
Jarrod, what do you rate this episode?
I'm gonna put one more 4 on the more with Dave, and solid stuff. I'm with Dave. I like the 221B environment a little better, but I think it's nice to go out in the country every once in a while and break up the monotony. So yeah, even though again, suspects limited, but I didn't remember that the murderer was Silver Blaze himself, and I thought, oh, that's pretty clever. So yeah, solid 4 for me.
Well, now comes the decision.
Oh,
I just don't know. I mean, my initial thoughts is I wanted to give it a 3 because to me, I felt like it just kind of ended. I do like the fact that the horse did it because it's a little bit different with the locations, which I love, the Inspector Gregory, the fun moments. You know, anytime there's an episode where Watson smiles, it kind of lights me up inside. So I think I'm going to join y'all on 4 Island and give this episode a 4.
sounds good to me.
Okay, one point. There is something that could have made this a 5 for me. And that's if Holmes would have completely flipped the script on us and really challenged our sensibilities and said, this horse killed that guy. We have to put it to death.
No, sir.
This is not a revenge killing. He did it on purpose.
You played it for weeks.
All the PETA people out there, that was a joke. I didn't mean it. I don't want to see any horse harmed in this recording of this episode.
Don't worry. We're the listeners of the show are currently on it.
Now that we have rated this episode, let's hear some final thoughts from Vincent Price on the episode Silver Blaze.
We mentioned earlier that Conan Doyle was confident his wife wouldn't be able to guess this story's solution. Well, more than one sports writer has pointed out that no one would be able to solve it, if they judged it by the actual laws regarding the training and racing of horses. Conan Doyle had to confess he knew nothing at all about these subjects. Holmes may have been at the top of his form, the author said, but my ignorance cries aloud to heaven. If they had acted as I described, half would have been in jail and the other half warned off the turf forever. Well, whatever. It's another one of those instances where Conan Doyle, writing quickly to meet magazine deadlines, worried more about the overall plot than about the details. And most readers are still willing to forgive him. Until next time, I'm Vincent Price for Mystery. Good night.
Before we ride off in our handsome cab for this episode, let's thank the Crusaders Club members who help pay the rent here at 221B. These are the fine folks who have joined our crusade. They enjoy exclusive access to special Longbox episodes, voting to help determine show content. They get priority seating to be on shows like Dave has joined this evening. Here are the folks reaping the benefits and giving some much appreciated support to the show and in no way funding Kathy's dog racing habit.
Alan Wright,
Angelica Wolf,
Auburn Elvis,
Bill Beer,
Braxton Underwood,
Captain Entropy,
Clark Westfield,
Clinton Robeson,
Dave Collins of Curried Mutton fame,
that's it, baby, Ezra Gallo,
Gary Viola,
Gene Hendricks,
Gerald Green,
Heinz K,
Jason Keene,
Jason Lady,
Jeremy L,
Jim Drummond, I hope you like Jim Jarman too.
Jim Mill,
and the always mentioned Joe Thomas,
The appropriately named John Watson,
Josh Strickland,
Candace Ward.
Captivating Kathy Bright, the MVP.
That's me sometimes.
Mark Ross, a.k.a. Cluck Trent,
Matt and Lizzie Passo,
Maxwell Traver,
Miranda W.,
P.D. Devins,
Paul Hicks,
Rick, Jeff and Rick Present,
Rob Morgan,
Samantha Maney,
Sean Urbanski,
Spidey 67,
Spreadsheet,
Steve Cronin,
Tim Price,
Tony Pennington.
and last but certainly not least, Toronto Cop.
Please keep in mind we record these episodes well in advance of release, so if your recent edition will be adding you soon, but no worries, let us know that we missed you by sending an email to contact@longboxcrusade.com. Pat Sampson answers those emails. Send your hate to him and he will get it straightened out. As a reminder, you can become a Crusaders Club member by heading over to patreon.com/longboxcrusade. For as little as $1 a month, we'll give you racing tips and you'll get access to the amazing world of the Crusaders Club. Come check it out. Offer not available in all areas, especially for Jason.
That will wrap up another LBC Irregulars and these two Sherlock Holmes stories. We'd love to hear from you if you're familiar with any variation of Sherlock Holmes, including the Granada adaptations. Longbox Crusade can be found on X, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Longbox Crusade. Email contact@longboxcrusade.com. Phone number 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX.
Pick up the telegraph.
Pick up the every 60-yard telegraph.
I'd use his if I were you. And if you want to chat with me personally, I can be found at Yard Sale Artist on X, Facebook, and Instagram. You can check out my artwares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. You can find me at your local Chinese buffet trying their spring rolls. Kathy?
I can be found on all social media at AUKathy2418, and that's Kathy with a K. And you apparently can find me hanging out at the dog tracks on the weekend.
Give me some racing tips. I'm going to run up and give me some racing tips.
Give that dog some X-Lax.
Dave, what about you? Where can people get in touch with you?
Ooh, woo! You're gonna have to. So we have a fun system here to get a hold of me because I'm a bit of a recluse. So we tried this once, and it took a few weeks, and I think we had all forgotten about it. But we had said on another show, if you want to find out what I'm thinking, you tweet or Instagram or Snapchat Jarrod. and then he texts it to me, and then I text him my reply, and then he posts it. It's a lot of fun. It's a great system.
We've actually made it work.
It's true, people. I mean, we apparently have some beef about Action Film Face Off, but I've never been able to talk to Dave directly about it. We just, respond to each other via Action Film Face Off podcast. I'm
a sad, strange little man, but that is the best way. And I also can be found lurking in the shadows at some comic book conventions at the LONGBOX CRUSADE and Yard Sale Staple.
You'll probably see all of us in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Odds are good. And he's not lying either, by the way. He carried on a conversation via social media, via me, with a guy from Australia. Okay.
True facts. True facts.
So the guy from Australia contacted me on social media, said, send this to Dave. I texted to Dave, texted some spots back to me. I screenshot it, send it back to the guy in Australia.
How much did he pay you for that?
Nothing. This is his free service. He's a Crusaders Club member.
Yeah, man. This is all part of the service they provide.
All the access. Be sure to join us next quarter as we take a look at the next 2 episodes of Season 4 of the Granadas series. Wisteria Lodge, The Bruce Partington Plans. Episodes 4 and 5 of Season 4 as aired on ITV in England. That's all, folks. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hello, bye.
Outtakes.
I think what you want to say is that you hate to see Watson go, but you like to watch him leave.
It's back to you guys.
No, it's
We're
not.
whispering again.
I thought it was.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I scrolled down too far.
I like whispering too.
So I've been hanging out with Curried Mutton and Silver Blaze.
You got that right. Like,
Curried
we could have got on a
Silver
double
Blaze.
bill. Like, imagine that.
Headline festivals all over the country.
You just better be glad you're not a maid in a 1854 house, or you would just be going crazy for me.
Just can't get enough.
Get enough.
Curried Mutton in the house.
I would be president of the fan clubs.
Silver Blaze.
Is that what I want to say?
Progenitor. That's a fun one.
I've never heard that word before in my life.
Precursor.
Oh, yes. I like that one.
You, Dave.
Is that the word I want? Like no, inspiration. That's the word I want.
I have a question about the investigator too. I was wondering if he had 6 fingers on his right hand.
This is a Princess Bride joke of some kind.
Is that the guy who played? Isn't that him?
No.
I didn't look it up, but God, it looked like him.
Oh,
No.
okay. The guy who played what?
Christopher Guest. Christopher
Okay.
Guest is the actor who plays
Yeah,
the
so-
Man.
singer man.
I was watching that thing the whole time. I was like, God, is this the guy? I didn't look it up. I didn't have a chance to look it
And
up.
and just for your knowledge, he's married to Jamie Lee Curtis. But anyway,
The guy with 6 fingers on his right hand?
Yeah.
yes,
Oh.
he's in Spinal Tap, Best in Show,
Yeah.
Waiting for
Yeah.
Guffman.
Well, he's not the guy I thought he was. So
No,
All that's coming out of the show anyway. Just make a fart noise.
I want to leave that. I like that part.
It's up to Kathy. Oh, I got things to do, don't I? Over here being funny with Dave, I forgot I had to read something.
The highlighted yellow part.
The one that has my name on it, highlighted in yellow. Okay, that's the one. Okay, here, let me try that.